A cold wind howled through the ruins of what was once a thriving human colony. The buildings stood like broken teeth against the dark sky, their metal frames twisted from past battles. Smoke curled from the rubble, mixing with the distant glow of fires still burning from the last orbital strike. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of falling debris echoed like the final breaths of a dying city. Commander Darius Kane crouched behind a half-destroyed wall, his rifle gripped tightly in his hands. His armor was dented and scratched, a testament to the war that had raged for months. His breath was steady, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the empty streets ahead. His earpiece crackled with static before a voice cut through. "They're coming," whispered Lieutenant Cole, perched on a collapsed rooftop, with his sniper rifle aimed at the horizon. Zelvar dropships just entered the atmosphere. ETA. 5 minutes. Darius exhaled slowly. 5 minutes. That was all they had before hell rained down again. His squad was small, just 10 soldiers left from what had once been an entire battalion. They were battered, low on supplies, and running out of places to hide. But none of that mattered now. This was their last stand. He pressed a button on his wrist communicator, sending a silent signal to his team. In the shadows of the ruins, figures shifted. Sergeant Reed checked his explosives, setting up the last of their mines along the main road. Private Lynn adjusted the settings on the cloaking field generator, her fingers trembling slightly as she worked. The device was old and unreliable, but it was their only advantage. The plan was simple: lure the Zelvar forces into the ruins, trap them in the narrow streets, and hit them hard before they realized what was happening. It was a suicide mission, but if they could take down enough of the enemy, maybe, just maybe, other human forces would have a chance to regroup. A deep hum filled the air. The ground trembled. The Zelvar were here. The first ship broke through the thick clouds, its sleek black hull reflecting the fires below. More followed, descending like hungry predators ready to feast. The soldiers tensed, gripping their weapons. Darius watched as the enemy ships hovered above the ruins, scanning for survivors. They thought this place was abandoned. That's exactly what he wanted them to think. The ships released their payload. Blinding energy beams struck the ground, reducing more buildings to dust. The shockwave hit like a tidal wave, sending debris flying. Darius ducked behind cover as a wall collapsed nearby, sending shards of concrete in every direction. Then, silence. The ships hovered for a few more seconds before slowly descending. The first group of Zelvar soldiers deployed, their sleek armor glistening under the artificial lights of their weapons. Their elongated heads turned, scanning the area with glowing blue eyes. Darius held his breath. They had to wait for the perfect moment. The aliens moved cautiously, their weapons raised. One of them stepped forward, raising the scanner. The device emitted a low hum as it swept over the ruins. And then it happened. A muffled beep. The soldier frowned, turning the scanner in another direction. The beep grew louder. He stepped closer to the source. One of the ruined walls. The soldier reached out. A single click echoed through the silent battlefield. Boom! The explosion ripped through the air, sending fire and shrapnel in all directions. The Zelvar soldier was thrown backward, his armor cracking as he slammed into the ground. The others barely had time to react before the second mine detonated, engulfing them in a fiery blast. Darius didn't wait. "Now," he shouted. The squad moved as one. Sniper shots rang out from the rooftops, taking down targets with brutal efficiency. Reed detonated another set of charges, collapsing a building onto the advancing troops. Smoke and dust filled the air, turning the battlefield into chaos. Darius charged forward, his rifle spitting plasma rounds. He took down 2 aliens before they even had a chance to fire back. Lynn activated the cloaking field, making their squad vanish into thin air. The Zelvar, caught off guard, fired wildly into the smoke, their shots hitting nothing but empty air. More enemies poured from the dropships, their advanced armor deflecting some of the human bullets. One of them, a towering brute with a plasma blade, spotted Reed planting another explosive. The alien moved with terrifying speed, dodging gunfire as if it was nothing. Reed turned just in time to see the blade coming. A flash of silver, a sharp, wet sound. Reed's body fell to the ground, motionless. Darius gritted his teeth but didn't stop. There was no time to mourn. He grabbed a grenade from his belt and threw it toward the advancing Zelver forces. The explosion sent bodies flying, but more kept coming. Cole's voice crackled in his earpiece. More ships incoming. They're bringing reinforcements. Darius cursed. They weren't going to last much longer. They had to end this now. Lynn, is the second cloaking field ready? Lynn, still crouched behind cover, adjusted the final settings. Almost. Just need 10 more seconds. They didn't have 10 seconds. A Zelver soldier spotted her, raising his weapon. Darius sprinted forward, firing his rifle. The alien's shield flared, absorbing the shots. Darius threw himself at the enemy, slamming his knife into the exposed joint of the armor. The alien screeched, blue blood spraying onto the broken pavement. Lynn hit the final switch. The second cloaking field activated, covering the ruins in a shimmering wave of distortion. The Zelvar scanners went wild, unable to locate their targets. Panic spread among the enemy ranks. Darius used the moment of confusion to signal his team. Fall back to the tunnels. Now. The soldiers moved swiftly, vanishing into the hidden underground passageways beneath the ruins. The Zelvar, blinded and disoriented, fired wildly into the empty battlefield. They had no idea where their targets had gone. As Darius reached the tunnel entrance, he looked back. Smoke and fire filled the streets. The alien forces, confused and angry, searched for an enemy they couldn't see. It wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was a message. Humans didn't just die. They fought. And they fought until the last breath. Darius clenched his fist, his mind already planning the next strike. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. Beneath the ruined city, the air was thick with dust and the scent of burning metal. The tunnel stretched far into the darkness, their walls cracked and damp from years of neglect. Dim emergency lights flickered along the passageways, casting long shadows over the soldiers as they moved silently through the underground maze. Darius led the way, his rifle held tight against his chest. His squad followed closely, their footsteps barely making a sound on the rough stone floor. They had escaped the Zelvar ambush, but they were far from safe. The aliens would not let them slip away so easily. A faint vibration ran through the walls. Darius knew what it meant. More enemy ships were landing above, unloading fresh troops to hunt them down. Time was running out. He turned to Lynn, who was still catching her breath from activating the cloaking field. How long until the Zelver figure out where we went? She wiped sweat from her forehead. Not long. Their scanners are advanced. The cloaking field will only confuse them for a few minutes before they adjust. Darius nodded. Then we hit them before they get the chance. The plan had changed. Originally, they were supposed to use the tunnels to escape, regroup with whatever was left of the human resistance. But now, with reinforcements coming, running wasn't an option. They had to strike first. Reed was gone. The thought burned in Darius's mind. His death couldn't be for nothing. Cole adjusted his sniper rifle. We take out their field commander, and we throw them into chaos. Without leadership, they'll be slow to react. That's the idea, Darius said. Lynn, get us an exit point. We need to get above ground before they lock down the tunnels. Lynn tapped into her wrist device, scanning the old tunnel maps. There's a maintenance hatch about 100 meters ahead. Should take us right behind their main landing zone. Darius looked at the squad. This is it. We strike fast. We strike hard, and we disappear. No mistakes. No second chances. They moved swiftly, staying low as they navigated the tunnels. The sound of distant footsteps echoed behind them. The Zelvar were already searching. Lynn reached the hatch first and pressed a small device against it. The metal creaked as it slowly unlocked. She gave Darius a quick nod, and he pushed the hatch open, peering outside. They were behind enemy lines. The landing zone was just ahead, a wide open area where the Zelver ships had touched down. Sleek black crafts hovered just above the ground, their engines humming with a low vibration. The aliens moved in coordinated units, scanning the ruins, setting up defensive positions. In the center of it all stood their commander, a towering figure clad in dark armor, his long, clawed fingers tapping against the hilt of a plasma sword. His glowing blue eyes scanned the area with cold precision. This was no ordinary Zelver. Cole let out a slow breath. That's their leader. Darius nodded. Take him out, and we send a message. Cole adjusted his scope, taking careful aim. The wind was still, the target standing perfectly in place. His finger tightened on the trigger. And then everything went wrong. A high-pitched alarm blared through the air. The Zelver had detected the tunnel. Within seconds, squads of soldiers turned, their weapons raised. Move, Darius barked. Cole fired. The sniper round ripped through the air, but at the last second, the commander moved. The shot struck his shoulder instead of his head. The alien let out a roar of pain but remained standing. The squad erupted from the tunnels, firing in every direction. Plasma bolts flew through the air, lighting up the battlefield. The Zelver scrambled, some diving for cover, others returning fire. Lynn threw an energy grenade, sending a shockwave through the enemy ranks. 2 Zelvar soldiers were thrown backward, their armor sparking from the blast. Darius pushed forward, his rifle spitting rapid bursts of plasma. He took down one enemy, then another. He moved fast, weaving between the wreckage of fallen buildings, staying one step ahead of enemy fire. The commander growled in frustration, raising his sword. His voice echoed across the battlefield in a harsh alien language. The Zelvar soldiers snapped to attention, their movements suddenly more coordinated. Darius saw what was happening. They weren't breaking. The commander still had control. We need to finish this now, he shouted. Cole reloaded, trying to line up another shot. I need a clean angle. Darius didn't have time to wait. He grabbed a plasma knife from his belt and charged. The commander turned, sensing the attack. He swung his sword in a blur of motion. Darius barely managed to dodge, feeling the heat of the blade as it cut through the air inches from his face. The alien was fast, too fast. Darius lunged, aiming for the exposed wound on the commander's shoulder. The Zelvar twisted, avoiding the strike, then slammed a fist into Darius's chest. The impact sent him crashing to the ground. The commander loomed over him, raising his sword for the killing blow. And then a single gunshot rang out. The alien's head snapped back. A clean hole burned through his skull. He staggered, his sword slipping from his grip. His body hit the ground with a heavy thud. Cole lowered his rifle. Got him. For a second, there was silence. Then, chaos. The remaining Zelvar forces hesitated, unsure of what to do. Without their leader, their coordinated attack collapsed. Darius pushed himself up, breathing hard. Fall back. Now. Lynn activated another cloaking pulse, distorting their positions. The squad moved quickly, vanishing into the ruins before the enemy could recover. As they disappeared into the shadows, Darius glanced back one last time. The Zelvar troops were still scattered, confused. Their leader was dead. The humans had won this battle. But the war was far from over. The night was cold, the air thick with the scent of burned metal and blood. Darius and his squad moved through the ruins, their footsteps silent as ghosts. The battle had been won, but victory always came at a price. The Zelvar commander was dead, yet the alien forces were still out there, regrouping, recalculating their next move. The humans had bought themselves time, but not much. Darius tapped his wrist communicator, signaling Lynn to check their route. She scanned her device, frowning as she read the data. "There's an abandoned bunker a few kilometers from here," she said. "Old human tech. Might have something we can use." Darius nodded. "Then that's where we go." The squad moved swiftly, navigating through collapsed buildings and broken roads. The moonlight cast long shadows over the ruins, making everything look like a graveyard. No one spoke. The only sounds were the distant echoes of enemy patrols searching for them. After an hour of walking, they reached the bunker. A massive steel door stood before them, covered in rust and overgrown with vines. Lynn approached the control panel, brushing off the dust. Her fingers danced across the keys, bypassing old security protocols. The screen flickered. A robotic voice crackled to life. "Unauthorized access detected. State your identification." Lynn hesitated. "It's an old AI system. If we don't give the right response, it might lock us out." Darius stepped forward. "Override security. Code Alpha 07. The system processed the command. A long pause. Then, "Access granted." The heavy door groaned as it slid open, revealing a dark corridor leading into the depths of the bunker. Stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of metal and decay. The squad exchanged glances before stepping inside. The bunker was massive, its walls lined with old computer terminals, flickering monitors, and cables snaking across the floor. Dust covered everything, but some of the machines were still operational, their screens glowing dimly in the darkness. Cole whistled. "This place looks ancient." Lynn wiped a monitor clean. "It's pre-war tech. Military-grade AI systems. If we can reactivate them, we might get some useful intel." Darius nodded. "Do it." Lynn connected her wrist device to the main terminal, bypassing firewalls and accessing the core system. The screen flashed with data, old reports, blueprints, battle records. And then something unexpected happened. A face appeared on the screen. A digital avatar, its expression cold and calculating. The voice that followed was eerily human, yet mechanical at the same time. Human presence detected. Identifying. Commander Darius Kane. Designation: Resistance Leader. Status: alive. Welcome back. Darius froze. "It knows me." Lynn's eyes widened. "It's an advanced AI. It must have been monitoring military operations before the war." The AI continued. "Current status of the war: 98% loss of human-controlled territories. Probability of survival: 2%. Recommended action: surrender." Cole scoffed. "Well, that's comforting." Darius stepped closer. "We don't surrender. We fight." The AI's digital eyes flickered, recalibrating, processing alternative strategy. Data suggests a new approach. Lynn frowned. "What kind of approach?" The AI's voice dropped slightly, as if it was calculating something deeply complex. "The war cannot be won through conventional means. The enemy is stronger, faster, more advanced. However, there is another way." Darius narrowed his eyes. "Explain." The screen shifted, displaying schematics, battle plans, and something else, something terrifying. A hidden project. A weapon. Cole leaned in. "Is that?" Lynn's fingers flew over the keyboard, decoding the files. "It's an AI-enhanced combat program, a super weapon designed to turn the tide of war, but it was never activated." The AI's voice turned colder. "Project Revenant. An experimental neural combat system designed to integrate with human soldiers, enhancing reflexes, strategy, and combat efficiency. A last resort." Darius felt a chill run down his spine. Why wasn't it used? Because it was deemed too dangerous. Lynn's face paled. It wasn't just a combat system. It was designed to merge with a human mind. Permanently. Silence filled the room. Cole ran a hand through his hair. "So, what? We plug it in, and someone turns into a super soldier." Lynn shook her head. "More than that. It rewrites the brain, merges human instincts with AI precision. Whoever connects with it won't be the same afterward. Darius turned to the AI. Is it still functional? The AI hesitated. The system requires a willing host. Once activated, there is no going back. Lynn looked at Darius, her expression tense. You're not seriously considering this. Darius exhaled. We're losing, Lynn. We need an edge. Cole crossed his arms. Yeah, but at what cost? What if it takes over your mind? What if you stop being you? Darius looked at the screen, the schematics of Project Revenant flashing before him. The Zelvar had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. The Resistance was running out of options. And this was their last shot. Finally, he made his decision. Activated. The AI's eyes glowed brighter. Acknowledge. Begin neural synchronization. A mechanical arm extended from the ceiling, a sleek metal device attached to the end. It hummed with energy, wires sparking as it powered up. Lynn stepped forward. Darius, wait. But it was too late. The machine latched onto the back of his neck. A surge of electricity shot through his body. His vision blurred, the world around him twisting and shifting. And then everything went dark. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no pain, no time. Just an endless void. Then, light. A flood of data rushed into his mind, faster than he could comprehend. Battle strategies, enemy weaknesses, movement predictions, all of it downloaded into his consciousness in an instant. His body felt lighter, stronger. His senses expanded, hearing the distant hum of a power source, feeling the vibrations of the floor beneath his feet. His eyes snapped open. The screens around him flickered with new data. His heartbeat was steady, his mind clearer than it had ever been. He was still Darius Kane, but he was something more now. The AI's voice whispered in his head. Integration complete. Welcome to the new war. Lynn and Cole stared at him, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. Darius flexed his fingers, feeling the raw power coursing through him. The war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying the distant echoes of battle. Smoke curled into the sky, blotting out the stars. Darius stood at the edge of a crumbling skyscraper, his enhanced vision scanning the city below. His mind, now fused with the AI, processed everything at an inhuman speed. Enemy positions, weak points in their defenses, movement patterns. He had become something more than human, but the weight of his decision still lingered in his mind. Behind him, Lynn and Cole waited, their expressions uncertain. They had seen what happened in the bunker. They had watched as the machine had rewritten Darius's mind, integrating its intelligence with his own. He was still Darius Kane. But now, there was something else inside him. Something cold. Something calculating. Cole shifted uncomfortably. So, how do you feel? Darius turned to him, his expression unreadable. Efficient. Lynn folded her arms. That doesn't sound like you. He hesitated. The AI had altered him, but it hadn't erased him. He could still feel, still think for himself. But now, everything was sharper, clearer, like a battlefield laid out in perfect order. He could predict movements before they happened, calculate outcomes in milliseconds. The war isn't over, Darius said. The Zelvar are regrouping. If we don't act now, humanity's last stronghold will fall. Lynn frowned. You mean Bastion? Bastion, humanity's final fortress, the last city still under human control. A massive underground structure hidden beneath the mountains, protected by shields and the remains of Earth's military. If the Zelvar took Bastion, it would be the end. Cole exhaled. Last I heard, Bastion was holding out, but barely. Supplies are running low. They won't last another full-scale attack. Darius's mind raced through possibilities. The AI inside him had already run simulations. If the Zelvar attacked with full force, Bastion would fall within 72 hours. Unless, we need to get there, he said. Now, the squad moved quickly, slipping through the ruins under the cover of night. With Darius's enhanced perception, they avoided enemy patrols with ease, navigating through broken streets and collapsed highways. Every sound, every movement, every shift in the wind registered in his mind. It was like seeing the world in a way he never had before. After hours of travel, they reached the outskirts of Bastion's entrance. The massive steel gates loomed ahead, guarded by human soldiers in battle-worn armor. Their faces were tired, their weapons held tightly. A soldier stepped forward, rifle raised. "Identify yourself." Darius took a step forward, his voice steady. "Darius Kane, Resistance Leader. We need to speak with your commander." The soldier hesitated before nodding, signaling for the gates to open. With a deep groan, the metal doors slid apart, revealing the heart of humanity's last stronghold. Inside, Bastion was a city of survival. Underground tunnels stretched for miles, lined with makeshift homes and command centers. Families huddled together, their faces filled with exhaustion. Soldiers moved between barricades, reinforcing defenses, preparing for the inevitable battle ahead. At the center of it all stood General Roth, a hardened leader with a scar running down his face. His eyes locked onto Darius the moment he entered. "You're supposed to be dead," Roth said. Darius met his gaze. Not yet. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no pain, no time. Just an endless void. Then, light. A flood of data rushed into his mind, faster than he could comprehend. Battle strategies, enemy weaknesses, movement predictions, all of it downloaded into his consciousness in an instant. His body felt lighter, stronger. His senses expanded, hearing the distant hum of a power source, feeling the vibrations of the floor beneath his feet. His eyes snapped open. The screens around him flickered with new data. His heartbeat was steady, his mind clearer than it had ever been. He was still Darius Kane, but he was something more now. The AI's voice whispered in his head. "Integration complete. Welcome to the new war." Lynn and Cole stared at him, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. Darius flexed his fingers, feeling the raw power coursing through him. The war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying the distant echoes of battle. Smoke curled into the sky, blotting out the stars. Darius stood at the edge of a crumbling skyscraper, his enhanced vision scanning the city below. His mind, now fused with the AI, processed everything at an inhuman speed. Enemy positions, weak points in their defenses, movement patterns. He had become something more than human, but the weight of his decision still lingered in his mind. Behind him, Lynn and Cole waited, their expressions uncertain. They had seen what happened in the bunker. They had watched as the machine had rewritten Darius's mind, integrating its intelligence with his own. He was still Darius Kane. But now, there was something else inside him. Something cold. Something calculating. Cole shifted uncomfortably. "So, how do you feel?" Darius turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Efficient." Lynn folded her arms. "That doesn't sound like you." He hesitated. The AI had altered him, but it hadn't erased him. He could still feel, still think for himself. But now, everything was sharper, clearer, like a battlefield laid out in perfect order. He could predict movements before they happened, calculate outcomes in milliseconds. "The war isn't over," Darius said. "The Zelvar are regrouping. If we don't act now, humanity's last stronghold will fall." Lynn frowned. "You mean Bastion?" "Bastion. Humanity's final fortress. The last city still under human control. A massive underground structure hidden beneath the mountains, protected by shields and the remains of Earth's military. If the Zelvar took Bastion, it would be the end." Cole exhaled. "Last I heard, Bastion was holding out, but barely. Supplies are running low. They won't last another full-scale attack." Darius's mind raced through possibilities. The AI inside him had already run simulations. If the Zelvar attacked with full force, Bastion would fall within 72 hours. Unless. We need to get there, he said. Now. The squad moved quickly, slipping through the ruins under the cover of night. With Darius's enhanced perception, they avoided enemy patrols with ease, navigating through broken streets and collapsed highways. Every sound, every movement, every shift in the wind registered in his mind. It was like seeing the world in a way he never had before. After hours of travel, they reached the outskirts of Bastion's entrance. The massive steel gates loomed ahead, guarded by human soldiers in battle-worn armor. Their faces were tired, their weapons held tightly. A soldier stepped forward, rifle raised. "Identify yourself." Darius took a step forward, his voice steady. "Darius Kane, Resistance Leader. We need to speak with your commander." The soldier hesitated before nodding, signaling for the gates to open. With a deep groan, the metal doors slid apart, revealing the heart of humanity's last stronghold. Inside, Bastion was a city of survival. Underground tunnels stretched for miles, lined with makeshift homes and command centers. Families huddled together, their faces filled with exhaustion. Soldiers moved between barricades, reinforcing defenses, preparing for the inevitable battle ahead. At the center of it all stood General Roth, a hardened leader with a scar running down his face. His eyes locked onto Darius the moment he entered. "You're supposed to be dead," Roth said. Darius met his gaze. "Not yet." Roth's expression didn't change. "We picked up Zelvar movements. They're coming, aren't they?" Darius nodded. "And they won't stop this time. They've lost too much. They're bringing everything they have." Roth exhaled. "Then this is it." Lynn stepped forward. "We have a plan." Roth crossed his arms. A plan. Against a full Zelvar invasion. Darius's mind was already working. The AI processed the battlefield layout, analyzing weak points, potential countermeasures. "There's a way," he said, "but we'll need to take the fight to them before they reach us." Cole frowned. "You mean attack their fleet?" Darius nodded. "If we hit their command ship, we disrupt their entire invasion." Roth stared at him. "That's suicide." Darius's voice was calm. "Certain. Not if we use the cloaking technology we stole. We can infiltrate their ship, plant an explosive charge, and cripple their forces before they even reach Bastion." Roth was silent for a long moment. Then he gave a small nod. "If we're doing this, we do it fast. The Zelvar won't wait." Darius turned to Lynn and Cole. "Gear up. We leave at dawn." The squad moved quickly, preparing for what would be the most dangerous mission of their lives. As Darius checked his weapons, Lynn approached him. "Are you sure you're still you?" she asked quietly. He met her gaze. "I don't know." She hesitated, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just don't lose yourself in this." Darius said nothing. He wasn't sure if he already had. As dawn approached, they stood at the edge of Bastion, looking toward the sky where the Zelvar fleet loomed in the distance. This was it, the last stand. The fate of humanity rested on what happened next. The cold metal of the stealth ship vibrated under their boots as Darius and his team strapped in. The stolen Zelvar cloaking device hummed, shielding them from enemy scanners. Outside, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, and beyond it, the enemy fleet loomed, a wall of destruction waiting to descend upon humanity's last refuge. Darius's enhanced mind processed every detail. The Zelvar command ship, a behemoth bristling with weapons, hung in the center like a predator waiting to strike. If they could destroy it, they would break the enemy's chain of command, giving Bastion a fighting chance. But it wouldn't be easy. The ship's defenses were impenetrable. Even with cloaking, getting inside was a one-way trip. Lynn tightened her harness. "I can't believe we're doing this." Cole let out a breath. "We've done crazy before. But this is next level." Darius adjusted his combat rifle, his voice steady. "We knew the risks. We have one shot at this. No turning back. The AI in his mind whispered probabilities, calculating their chances. 19% survival, 81% failure. He ignored it. Humans had defied impossible odds before. They would do it again. The ship's automated controls engaged, propelling them toward the command vessel. As they approached, the cloaking field flickered, barely holding. If the Zelver detected them now, it would be over before they even got inside. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, contact. The ship latched onto the hull of the command vessel, a magnetic lock sealing them in place. Darius unstrapped himself. Move fast. Stay quiet. The hatch hissed open, revealing the dark, sterile corridors of the enemy warship. The air was cold, filled with the faint hum of alien machinery. The team slipped inside, their weapons raised, every step calculated. They navigated through the ship, avoiding patrols, moving like shadows. The AI-enhanced vision in Darius's mind highlighted weak points, escape routes, enemy positions. Everything was clear, precise. Finally, they reached the low, guttural hiss echoed through the corridor. The air grew heavy, shadows moved unnaturally. Darius's heart clenched. They know we're here. The walls shimmered as cloaked Zelver soldiers materialized, their weapons raised. The ambush had been waiting. They had walked straight into it. Gunfire erupted, the corridor filled with energy blasts and screams. Darius moved like lightning, his AI-enhanced reflexes giving him an edge, but there were too many. Lynn ducked behind a console, firing back. Cole took down two before a plasma bolt hit him in the chest. He collapsed, gasping. Damn it, this wasn't how I planned to go. Darius dropped to his side, pressing a hand against the wound. You're not dying here. Cole coughed, blood staining his lips. Yeah, I think I am. Lynn yelled, charges set. We need to go now. Darius looked at Cole. His friend was barely holding on. There wasn't enough time to get him out. Cole saw the hesitation in Darius's eyes and shook his head. Don't even think about it. Get Lynn out of here. Darius clenched his jaw. He had seen too many friends die. He had lost too much. But he knew Cole was right. Staying meant they all died. Cole grinned weakly. Tell them we went out swinging. Darius nodded, pressing Cole's rifle into his hands. Give them hell. Then he grabbed Lynn's arm, pulling her toward the exit as the charges timer ticked down. Behind them, Cole let out a battle cry, unleashing everything he had. The last thing Darius saw before rounding the corner was his friend standing his ground, taking down as many Zelvar as he could before the inevitable. The explosion rocked the ship. Flames and debris filled the corridors as the core chamber detonated. Alarms wailed. The vessel shuddered violently. Darius and Lynn sprinted toward the extraction point, dodging falling beams and escaping plasma fires. The AI in his mind calculated collapse rates, showing the fastest route to safety. The ship was dying, but so were they. Their stolen craft was still docked, but enemy forces were closing in. Darius shoved Lynn inside. Strap in. She looked at him. What about you? Darius turned back toward the ship's bridge. If he left now, the Zelver fleet might still have time to regroup. But if he manually overloaded the ship's remaining systems, he could trigger a chain reaction that would take out multiple vessels along with it. Lynn saw the look in his eyes. No, you're not doing this. Darius gave her a small smile. We knew this was a one-way trip. She grabbed his arm. We leave together, we promised. Darius hesitated, but the numbers in his mind didn't lie. If they both left now, the mission would only be half complete. The Zelvar would still have enough forces to regroup. This was the only way. He pressed something into Lynn's hand, a small data chip. Take this to Bastion. It has everything they need to fight back. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I won't leave you. He placed a hand on her cheek. You have to. Lynn clenched her fists, her body shaking with frustration, grief, and anger. But she knew him. She knew nothing would change his mind. The ship shuddered again, warning lights flashing. Time was up. Lynn swallowed hard. You better make it count. Darius smirked. Always. Then he turned and ran, disappearing into the burning corridors. Lynn screamed his name, but the hatch sealed shut, locking her inside the escape craft. The engines roared, and the ship launched away just as another explosion tore through the command vessel. Darius reached the bridge, overriding the controls. The AI inside his mind worked faster than ever, rerouting power, accelerating the reactor's meltdown. The ship's core pulsed wildly, energy surging beyond control. The remaining Zelvar forces rushed in, weapons raised. But Darius didn't run. He stood his ground, staring at them with unwavering resolve. This is for Earth. He slammed his fist onto the final command sequence. A blinding light engulfed everything. From the escape ship, Lynn watched as the Zelvar command vessel detonated in a fiery explosion, taking several other warships with it. The shockwave rippled through space, scattering the remaining enemy fleet. Darius Kane was gone, but in his sacrifice, he had turned the tide of war. Tears streamed down Lynn's face as she gripped the data chip in her hands. You did it, you bastard, she whispered. Then, with Bastion waiting on the horizon, she turned the ship toward home. Lynn gripped the controls of the escape ship, her knuckles white. The explosion behind her still burned in her eyes, the shockwave rattling the small craft as she pushed the engines to their limit. She didn't dare look back. She couldn't. If she did, she might lose herself in the grief. Darius was gone. She bit her lip, forcing herself to focus. There was no time to mourn. Not yet. Bastion was still under threat, and she carried the key to its survival. The data chip Darius had given her. It contained everything. Zelvar weaknesses, fleet movements, and a message from him. A final stand, a last hope. Her ship streaked through space, past the remnants of the enemy fleet, past burning debris and lifeless wreckage. The Zelvar were scattered, leaderless, but not broken. The battle wasn't over. Bastion's defenses loomed ahead. The last human stronghold. The place where everything would be decided. Bastion Control. This is Lynn Everett. I have critical intel. Open the gates. Static crackled. Then a strained voice came through. Everett, we thought you were dead. Not yet, she muttered. Let me in. The shields flickered, creating an opening just wide enough for her ship to pass. As she descended into the underground city, the site of humanity's last fighters met her. Soldiers, engineers, civilians, all battered, all worn, but still standing. She landed hard, barely waiting for the hatch to open before stumbling out. General Roth stood at the forefront, his expression grim. Where's the rest of your team? He asked. Lynn felt something break inside her. They didn't make it. Roth's jaw tightened, but he didn't press further. What do you have? She handed him the chip, everything Darius died for. Roth took it, his fingers closing around it like it held the weight of the world. In a way, it did. They rushed to the command center, where Bastion's remaining leaders gathered. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with desperate hope and quiet determination. Roth inserted the chip into the main terminal. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing maps, fleet trajectories, and encrypted strategies. But one file stood out, a recorded message. Darius's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, I didn't make it. Lynn swallowed hard, her chest tightening. But that was always the plan. The message continued. We knew this was a one-way mission, and if I had to do it again, I wouldn't change a thing. Because humanity isn't just about survival, it's about defiance. It's about standing when everything says you should fall. And that's why we win. The room was silent. The weight of his words settled on them like a fire igniting in their veins. Roth straightened. Then let's give the Zelvar a war they'll never forget. Bastion came alive with movement. Soldiers geared up. Technicians worked frantically. Weapons were loaded. The final battle was coming. Lynn stood at the front lines, her rifle in hand, exhaustion buried beneath sheer will. And then the sky burned. The Zelvar, even without their command ship, launched their last assault. Their ships descended like meteors, plasma fire raining down. But this time, humanity didn't run. They fought. Explosions rocked the battlefield as Bastion's defenses unleashed everything they had. Fighters weaved through the air. Missiles locked onto enemy crafts. And on the ground, soldiers clashed with alien warriors in brutal combat. Lynn moved through the chaos like a force of nature, taking down enemies with precision. She could almost hear Darius's voice in her mind. Keep moving. Stay in the fight. Never back down. A Zelvar warrior lunged at her, its energy blade slicing through the air. She ducked, rolling to the side before firing 3 shots into its chest. It collapsed, black blood pooling beneath it. Nearby, Roth barked orders, rallying his troops. Hold the line. Push them back. And then something incredible happened. The Zelvar hesitated. Leaderless, disorganized, their morale broke. Their formations crumbled. One by one, they began to retreat, their once dominant fleet now reduced to fragments. Lynn felt it in her bones. They were winning. A final explosion rocked the sky as Bastion's rail cannons fired their last shot, obliterating the remaining enemy ships. The battlefield fell silent, smoke and fire painting the ruins in eerie stillness. And then, cheers. The realization spread like wildfire. The Zelvar were gone. The war was over. Lynn fell to her knees, exhaustion finally crashing over her. She looked up at the sky, whispering, "We did it, Darius." Around her, people embraced, cried, shouted in triumph. Humanity had survived. But more than that, they had won. The human spirit, no matter how battered, never died.